Okay, so all we're doing is basically for we're working on unit 4.6 homework, okay? And we're going to do numbers 7 through 10. Okay, so for 4.6, your homework, all that's left for 4.6 homework is numbers 7 through 10. So we're going to go through. You guys did 1 through 6 yesterday on worksheet 6. Okay, I'm going to do 7 through 10 right now. I'm going to do the odd ones. Okay, then after we're done with these ones, then we're going to do 4.7's homework, just the odds. So basically our notes today is just your homework. So there's not necessarily like separate notes and homework today, basically. So on worksheet 6, first let's look at number 7. Okay. Yes, you are going to have to turn it in. Yes. Okay. So I know a lot of times in math, you guys think that like what we do in math has absolutely nothing to do with life. Okay. This is one of those times that you actually could use some of this math in your life. Okay, this is a very kind of simple example, but if anybody ever goes to business school, or if you ever choose to open a business or run a business or manage a business, anything like that, you need to know something about revenue and price. Okay, so this is not number 7 yet. Say it again. Okay, so for number 7, I'm not talking about your problem just yet. I'm giving you just a general example. Okay, general example of revenue and price. Okay, if you made a chart like this, okay, whether or not you realize it, the amount of money you make is based on how much you sell something for. Okay, so that is a upside down parabola basically. Okay, so basically a revenue equation can be graphed generally like this. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Do we write this down?
You don't have to. I'm just showing you, like, the general idea here. Right? Price, this would be your price, and this is your revenue. Okay? You don't have to write this part down. So, let's just say that you're selling pizzas. Okay? If you charge $0 for your pizza, how much money do you think you're going to make?
0.
No, you'll actually be losing money. You'll make negative money, okay? At 0, revenue is negative because you have to buy the ingredients, you have to pay your employees, you have to pay for your facility, all this stuff. So if you just gave away pizza, you would be losing money, okay? If you sold pizza for, like, say, $1, okay? Do you think you're going to make anything? No, you're going to be losing money, okay? This right here is what you would call your break-even point, okay? And I'm not giving you any numbers, but let's just say this was like, I don't know, 5. Okay, so if you sold pizzas for $5, you're not making any money, so that's 0 on revenue, but you're also not losing any money, okay? What you want to get to is this amount right here, okay? This is where you would maximize your revenue. So you would want to figure out, what is this number? Say it's 8. Okay, so say you did market research, you figured out, okay, $8 is when I would sell the most pizzas, okay? What ends up happening after that is you also lose money, okay? If you cost too much, like if you sold pizzas for $100 each, you're not going to make any money, right? Okay? No, you wouldn't. You'd be losing money because you probably wouldn't sell very much. You might sell a little bit, but would you break even? Probably not. Okay, you wouldn't sell very much, and you also wouldn't make very much because you wouldn't have any sales. So revenue is based on an upside down parabola, basically. Okay, and what we're going to deal with now are, what would you call this in terms of a parabola? What point is that? What is this called? The maximum. Okay, and the maximum is a vertex, right? So everything we're doing today is dealing with finding the vertex in a parabola. Okay, so something like number 7. It gives you the equation. It says the revenue R made selling phones at price P can be modeled by R equals negative 5 over 2 P squared plus 500P. What we're trying to find is A, what is the price that will maximize the company's revenue? And B, what is their maximum revenue? So I want to figure out what is the vertex, essentially. The actually most difficult part here is not finding the answer, but figuring out which one is X and which one is Y traditionally. If you wrote this as a Y equals equation, where would the Y go? Where the R is or where the P is?
R.
The R. So basically, when you're figuring these out, we just need to find the vertex, okay? The X part of the vertex is talking about price. The Y part of the vertex is talking about revenue. So from this equation, how would you find the vertex? What would you have to do? Yeah, so from now, you need to start writing. So how would you find the vertex of this equation? Start by doing what? You can't change this. We do not have to change this to descriptive form. This is basically in standard form. What would you do? Okay, factoring would find this point, the x-intercept. So that would again be finding where would you make no money. So we don't want to do that, but I want to find the vertex. Okay, I'm not trying to factor. How would you find the vertex? Okay. Right. So all we really have to do here is if I was looking for the x, remember to find the x in a vertex, you just plug in x equals negative b over 2a. We're going to do the same thing here. So here, what would your b value be in this equation? Negative 500. Okay, remember it. The a value is always whatever's attached to the squared term. Doesn't matter if it's a p squared or an x squared. Okay, it doesn't really matter. The a value is always what's attached to the square. The b value is always what's attached to the single letter by itself. And the c value here is technically like a plus 0. The c value is the one that's just at the end. It doesn't have any letters attached to it. So here, if I plugged in negative b, that'd be negative 500 over 2 times negative 5 over 2. Now, don't freak out too much yet, because these are going to go away. You're not going to have to deal with too many fractions. What happens when you do 2 times negative 5 over 2? The 2's cancel out. So really, this just becomes negative 500 over negative 5, which gives you what?
Negative 100.
100. Would it make any sense to get a negative answer here?
No.
No, because I just found my what? My price or my revenue? The price. Okay? So the price is $100. If you got a negative answer, that wouldn't make sense. Okay? With none of these word problems should you be getting negative answers. Now, if we know the price, the best price to make the most money is $100, how would you find the revenue? Plug it back in, exactly. So plug into your equation. So revenue equals negative 5 over 2 times 100 squared plus 500 times 100. And you can work that out. So negative 5 over 2, what is 100 squared? 100 times 100 is 10,000 plus, what's 500 times 100? It's not a trick question. 5,000.
Oh, got it.
Okay. Then what would we do? What would we do?
Cross reduce.
Cross reduce. Okay, so the 2 cancels out with what?
1,000. 10,000.
Cancels out with 10,000 to give you what?
5,000.
5. I'm sorry, this should be 50,000. I lost a 0. I'm sorry. Okay, so this reduces to be 50,000. Negative 5 times 50,000 gives you what?
Wait, is it 50 or 5?
50, sorry.
How do
I lost a 0.
100 times
I was gonna correct you.
how do we
Lost the 0 and the 10,000.
It should have been 100,000.
Yeah.
Another 250.
What are we talking about?
Then how do we get 50 if we haven't multiplied the negative 5 yet?
I'm multiplying. So negative 5 times 5,000 gives you what? Negative 5 times 5,000 should give you negative 25,000. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Plus 50,000 gives you what? 25,000. Don't get caught up on all the zeros, okay? It's just multiplication, okay? So here, that's not the difficult part. You just have to deal with the zeros. Sometimes there's fractions. You just deal with them, okay? In the real world, you don't always just get to get rid of the fractions or decimals, okay? You just have to work with them. So here, what is the maximum amount of revenue? 25,000. Those are your answers, okay? I should see at least this much work on these problems. Okay, let's try another one. You guys are going to do 8 on your own, but I'll do 9 with you. For number 9, it says the available power is a function of the amount of current flowing in amperes. P equals 120A minus 20A squared. We want to figure out how many amperes will produce the maximum power and what is the maximum power. So, solve for A, solve for P. So, how would I do that? Again, all I'm trying to find is what in the parabola? The what? The vertex. Okay, we're trying to find the vertex. So, how do I find the vertex in this equation? So, this is in the Y spot, this is in the X spot. How do I start to find the vertex? Start with x equals negative b over 2a. What is the b value in this equation? 120. This is backwards, okay? The a value is always whatever's attached to the square. The b value is whatever's attached to the letter by itself. So these ones are written a little bit backwards. So here, negative b was actually negative 120 over 2 times, what's your a value? Negative 20. So we got negative 120 over negative 40. What does that give you?
Wait, negative.
Gives you 30.
3.
3.
So A is equal to 3. So 3 amps will produce the maximum amount of power in this equation. How do I solve to get how much power that is?
Plug it in.
Plug it in. So P equals 120 times 3 minus 20 times 3 squared. 120 times 3 is what? 360 minus 20 times 3 squared is 9. So 360 minus 20 times 9 is 180. What's 360 minus 180?
180.
180. So the maximum amount of power is 180, and it's probably 180 watts or some descriptor that we don't have to worry about. So all we're doing here is finding the vertex in these parabolas. Yes?
So for these questions on the homework, do you write them on the homework or just do them all? Where you write them in?
What are you talking about?
Questions, right?
This is your homework. So you keep going after this.
Yeah, but are we turning it into them?
You are turning this in.
Okay,
Wait, so-
my notes.
This is part of your homework.
Well, what if we have a note?
Just find A and B.
They're not going to be able to. Say it again.
Just find A and B for homework.
Yes. So for numbers 8 and 10, you're just finding A and B.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so you're finding A and B for 8 and 10. Okay? Now I want to look at 4.7. What's your question, Jess?
Why does 120 should be A instead of ABC?
Okay. The ABCs, A is always whatever's attached to the squared term. This one is written backwards. Okay? It's written backwards on purpose to see if you understand that it's not always ABC order. Just like the ones with the parentheses, those don't have ABCs. So there can be parts missing. Okay? Or this one is rewritten. Like it's mixed up. Okay? Next thing I want to go over is 4.7 homework. Okay? So unit 4.7.
Can I do them on the same paper?
That's fine. Yeah, if you want to do them on the same paper, you can. Okay, so 4.7, this is talking about basically throwing things in the air. Okay, you're going to have 2 different kinds of problems. The first kind is going to be if you throw something in the air, we're going to figure out how long does it take until it hits the ground, basically. Okay, so if you throw something in the air, it starts at 0. There's going to be 3 different parts that we're going to find. We want to find how long does it take to get to the highest point, what is the maximum height, and then when does it hit the ground. So the maximum height and how long it takes to get there is what? What do you call that in terms of a parabola?
Vertex.
That's the vertex. What's it called when you hit the ground?
End point.
What is this called if it was just a parabola? What are these called? The x-intercepts. Okay, obviously there's an x-intercept at 0 because that's when it leaves the ground. Okay, so these are called the x-intercepts. Okay, we're also going to deal with some problems where you throw something, say, off a cliff or off the top of a building. Okay, if you're throwing it off the top of a building, it doesn't start at the ground. So you might be finding the vertex and when it hits the ground. Okay, so if you're throwing it off the top of, say, a building or a mountain or something like that, there's going to be two different kinds of problems that we're going to do. Okay, so something like number 1 on worksheet 7, it says Jason is standing on the ground and throws a ball vertically upward with an initial speed of 80 feet per second. Its height after t seconds is given by h equals 80t minus 16t squared. We want to find how high does the ball go. So what is its maximum height? How long does it take to get there? And then how long until it hits the ground again? So how high does it go? How long does it take to get there? And how long does it take to get to the ground? So in this case, what's the first thing I need to do to find? We're doing a problem like this, where you throw it from the ground, and it's, say it again? Okay, well you have to identify your ABCs here. Start with the x equals negative b over 2a portion. So we're first going to start by finding the vertex. What's the b value in this equation? 80. So negative 80 over 2 times the a value is negative 16. You can work this out, so that gives you negative 80 over negative 32. What's 80 divided by 32?
Fraction.
Yes, it's a fraction. How can you reduce that fraction? What goes into both 80 and 32?
8.
8 goes into both, so that would be 10 over 4. Can you reduce that again? 5 over 2. What am I finding here? The height or the time? This is like your y. This is like your x. So am I solving for height or time right now? Time. Does it make any sense to say 5 over 2 seconds? No, how would you change that? You'd write 2.5 or 2.5. Okay? So sometimes, depending on the problem, sometimes you have to convert it. Usually I'll tell you guys to just leave them in improper fractions, but this is the time that improper fractions doesn't really make sense. So here, the time to get to its maximum height is 2.5 seconds.
How do you know that's time?
Because here, y is in, or h is in the y spot, t for time is in the x spot. And we just solved for x equals. So you just kind of have to look at your original equation. Then to figure out its maximum height, what would you do?
Plug it in.
Plug it back in. So h equals 80 times 2.5 minus 16 times 2.5 squared. Now, in this case, do you want to leave this in decimals? Do you know what 80 times 2.5 is, just on the top of your head?
No.
Yeah, not so much. I would, when I'm plugging these back in, I would put it back in an improper fraction. Okay? It's not that bad if you put in an improper fraction. So I would change this back to 5 over 2. So depending upon what you're working with, sometimes you're going to have to go between. What's 80 times 5 over 2? What can you do there?
Cancel it.
Cross reduce. So 80 and 2 leaves you with 40. What's 40 times 5? 200. That should be easy. Minus 16 times 5 over 2 squared gives you 25 over 4. What can you do with the 16 and the 25 over 4? Cross reduce. So 16 and 4 reduce to give you a 4.
Where'd you get 25 and 4?
5 over 2 squared, square the top, square the bottom. 5 squared is 25, 2 squared is 4. Then if you multiply through, we get 200 minus 4 times 25 is 100. So what is its maximum height? 100 feet. And then the last portion is how long does it take to get the ground, or to hit the ground? What is that called when it hits the ground? It's called a what?
X-intercept.
X-intercept. So how do you find X-intercepts for something?
Plug Plug it in.
Set it equal to 0, right? Because the height is 0 at the ground. So 0 equals 80 times t minus 16t squared. How do you solve here? How do you solve for t? GCF. Okay, this is exactly what we've been doing all last unit at the beginning of this unit. This is why you factor. Okay, what's the GCF between 80t and negative 16t squared? What's the biggest thing that goes into both of them? 16t. 16 goes into both. If you didn't take out the greatest common factor, it would reduce away eventually, but 16 makes it easiest. So 80 divided by 16t gives you a 5 minus what? T, or 1t. Okay? Take out a 1, take out one of the t's. Then split these up, set each part equal to 0. So 16t equals 0, and 5 minus t equals 0. You divide both sides by 16, t equals 0. But you already knew that, right? You knew that it started on the ground. So yeah, it's on the ground at 0 time. But we already knew that. How do you solve this one? Add the t to the other side. So 5 equals t. So how long does it take before it hits the ground? 5 seconds. Now, a lot of people see this and they think, oh, awesome, I can just always double whatever, how long it took to get to the highest point. I can always just double it and it'll be on the ground. That's not true. Okay, because sometimes if you don't start from the ground, yes, it makes sense that since this is a line of symmetry in a parabola, however long it takes to get here, you could double it to get to the end. Problem is, you're not always starting at the ground. Okay, if you start up in the air, like off a cliff or something like that, it doesn't work that way. So let's do another one, and that'll be starting off a cliff, for instance. So let's start on, let's do like number 5. Okay, and you guys can do the rest for homework. So for number 5, it says, Roger is standing at the top of a lighthouse. He's 96 feet above the ocean. He throws a ball into the air. The height h of the ball after t seconds is given by h equals negative 3t squared plus 12t plus 96. We want to find what's the ball's maximum height. So maximum height, how long does it take to get to its maximum height, and when would the ball hit the ocean? Okay, the ocean is considered like 0 level. So basically what we need to find here is would be a drawing like this. You don't have to draw this part. This starts at 96 feet. We want to find the vertex and the x-intercept. How would I do that? How do I find vertex and x-intercept? Start by doing x equals negative b over 2a. What's your b value in this equation? 12. So negative 12 over 2 times a is negative 3. That gives you negative 12 over negative 6. Which is what? Positive 2. And we're talking about what here? Time or height? Time. Okay, the x portion here, this is the y, or excuse me, the h is in the y value. The x is in the t value here. So time is in the x spot.
What is the 2 t's?
Where? Right here? Because this one is time to maximum height. This one is time to the ground. Say it again. Right, so time it takes to get all the way to the end. So here, the time that it takes to get to its maximum is 2 seconds. Okay, it takes 2 seconds to get to the maximum height. Do you think that it's going to take 4 seconds to get to the ground?
No.
No, not necessarily. Yes, Mariah.
Okay, so when we do this equation, are we always going to get b first?
It just kind of depends. You have to see what the question's asking you, because like the ones that we just did on 4.6, I think we got the A portion first, right? Yeah, we got the A portion first. So you just have to figure out like what order they're asking in. Sometimes they're asking them in actually a messed up order, because you have to do like the second part first. Is that kind of what you meant?
Yeah.
Okay. So then to find height, how do you find the maximum height?
Plug
Plug back in. So h equals negative 3 times 2 squared plus 12 times 2 plus 96. So negative 3 times 2 squared is 4. 12 times 2 is plus 24. And plus 96. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. Plus 24. Plus 96. If we work this out, negative 12 and 24 is positive 12 plus 96. So what is its maximum height? 108, and here we're talking about feet. So the maximum that this ball gets, the highest it gets, is 108 feet above the ground. Yes? If you label them, I would appreciate it, but if you don't write feet or seconds or something like that, it's okay. I would write it just so that you make sure that you're writing it in the right spot and it kind of makes sense. Okay? Would it ever make sense that this would be negative?
No.
No. You can't. You're not throwing something like into the ground. Okay? You can't throw negative. Then, how do we find how long it takes to hit the ground? What would you do? Plug in 0. So set it equal to 0. So 0 equals negative 3t squared plus 12t plus 96. How do you factor and solve this? Take out a GCF. What's the GCF here? It's actually a negative 3. Okay, you can't factor if you have a negative in front. So you have to actually factor out the negative. Then left behind would be t squared. Then what?
Plus 0.
Minus 4t minus 32. The reason it's negative is because if you factor out a negative, positive divided by negative leaves behind negatives. Then you can factor this, so negative 3. What multiplies to negative 32 and adds to negative 4?
Negative 8 and 4.
Negative 8, positive 4. Then set each part equal to 0, so negative 3 equals 0. T minus 8 equals 0. If you add t to both sides, or add 8 to both sides, you get t equals 8. And finally, t plus 4 equals 0. If you subtract 4 from both sides, t equals negative 4. So, which one is actually your answer? The 8. Okay, this is just the GCF. Does it make sense that it took negative 4 seconds to reach the ground?
No.
No. That's what's called an extraneous solution. And here, it would take 8 seconds before it hit the ocean or the ground level. Questions on how I did that? Okay, so for homework, you guys have to do on worksheet number 6, you're going to do numbers 8 and 10. And on worksheet 7, you are doing numbers 2 through 4 and 6 to 8. Okay, so you don't have that much to do.